where you have to have some in there.
Gotcha.
And add two.
Okay.
Some are, a batch where you can empty the whole thing and start.
Gotcha.
We had both.
Okay.
But how did they start up 1,200 degree air? How long would that take to start melting?
Good question. I actually need to research that a little bit because I don't know too much about the restarting process, unfortunately. Nobody's really written that down specific to this site.
Wow. There's a lot of lost knowledge, huh? Are you in are you an engineering student?
I'm a history. So I have my undergrad and master's in history. And unfortunately, a lot of the oral histories that they recorded, the men would be like, oh yeah, and then we restarted it. And it was just like, okay, but
of course you know how it is.
But to them, it was like, oh yeah, we just restarted it. But then, for historians looking back now, it's trying to find specific details of like what was the process to restart it versus just restart it.
How long does it take to restart now with your electric induction?
Oh my gosh! Well, depending on who's at the controls up there. One time I was down there first, and you know the Wii bowling I told you about when you let go of the ball in the safety area, and then you go like this. I was doing this on the first line. How is it? 6,000 kW max power.
Okay.
When we empty the furnace, even though they're medium frequency, I never have it up to maybe like 4,000 kW.
Gotcha.
You don't care. Well, that's the way they sold them to us, and they're supposed to go. Yeah, right. Then you know what it does? It has fault detection. Ground detection, right? So now you got to call an electrician to come out to reset.
Oh, jeez.
That's why we just leave it at 4,000.
Yeah.
So how long does it take?
But it doesn't take long to.
What's that?
An hour and a half. We can empty that 16. Yeah, the whole furnace. 16.
Which is impressive because these furnaces, it would take them
days.
About because they even talked about it originally. James Sloss, who built the site, had a hearing in the Senate talking about labor and things like that, and he said the big problem with labor is nobody wanted to work on Sundays because, of course, very religious, and wanted to go to church, and exactly. And so the senators were just like, well, why don't you just shut it down on Sunday and restart it on Monday? He's like, well, by the time we shut it down Saturday night, the moment it got done, we'd have to restart it immediately. It wouldn't be ready by Monday, and so he's like, it just wasn't worth the time to do all that.
Yeah. So there was probably. Can you tell us about the administration? There was the line workers, and then there was probably architects and engineers running around.
Right. So of course we had all the presidents and all of the CEOs and all those
business
managers, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you had the engineers, which we had a main engineer at all times, and then of course other engineers. On site though, of course you had your managers and your foremans, which were the ones usually had a foreman of each section of the site. Yeah. And then you had just your laborers and your different jobs with your laborers. Now of course
trades.
Here in Sloss, which of course is in Birmingham, these jobs were technically segregated. Now the men worked right next to each other, so you'd have men doing pretty much the exact same work right next to each other. They gave everyone different job titles so they could pay the white and the black workers differently, right? So that's how they kept a cheap black workforce to help make their costs cheap, right? So there
wasn't any of one color working in one position that would be working in other?
So the reason is because around 70 to 80% of the workforce across Birmingham industry was black. And so you can't have, with that high percentage, you had to have men working next to each other. And so there's lots of pictures.
What's this guy's race? I'm not a racist.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so of course he's white. Now, you have pictures of the men opening the furnace here, and you'd have one white guy and two black guys working right next to each other, opening the furnace together. But they would be different job titles on paper, so they could pay them differently. And that's how they got around and still did Jim Crow.
Do you know how many people worked here?
Originally, they hired around 300 to 350 men to run the site 24 hours a day, year round. But that would be a little bit more than what was necessary because turnover was so high. People would just not show up all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We don't have a problem at all.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure you don't.
So PPE, no spats, okay.
Nope.
He does have gloves, and he does have, I'm surprised he has glasses, because I've actually seen foundry work without
protection. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But we have the greens, the flame retardant greens.
Yeah, and the metal artists, they just do full leather.
And I'm running a crane, but I'm still wearing my green.
Yeah. No, this is way before OSHA, right? There's no OSHA at this time. That's the thing. It was kind of an anything goes, and
you had so you must have had a lot of pipe fitters and plumbers and electricians.
Welders, machinists.